Hi, and welcome to Rebel Culture. I'm Art Perry, also known as Professor Art, and today we're going to move into part three. Who would have known? Part three, looking at the banning and censorship of culture, and more specifically, the attempt to erase history that's happening in America right now. And where do I want to start it today? Where do I want to, you know, get our brain boxes rattling? Let's go with the idea of history, right? Uh, what exactly is history, right? What is the like we each have our own individual history, our personal histories, our little histories, right? And they come uh, to us as memory. Right? We remember things. We remember the things which are the deep disappointments, perhaps, in our lives, but also, our loves, our triumphs, the things that are etched into our mind, and they become a string of memories that make up our personal histories. Now, that's the little histories, and of course, there's the big history, the world history, right? The traumatic events, the plagues, the wars, but also the great human achievements, the what I'm focusing on primarily with this podcast, which is culture. The major um, moments of human creativity. All of that's part of history, and we each have our own moments of creativity as well. But art and culture, uh, it's what makes life. And I've mentioned this before. I mean, it we have this cloud of existential dread, right? We exist with, and it's the art, it's the music, the films, the literature, the things which push us beyond the everyday, the where we get into ideas of epiphanies and celebrations, and it doesn't take that much, but that's what uh, is a major part of our history. Our playlist, the things we talk to our friends about. So I want to start off with this idea of personal histories and how important they are, right? They're our testament, they're our legacy. That's, the smudge we've made on time. And it's very important to our own definition. I'm going to talk about that in a second, too. So let's start off. Uh, I'll grab something from my personal history, a moment that is in my life a very, I hate the word important, a very defining moment. And it was quite early, right? In late 1959 into 1960, I was sent from Ottawa, my home was, to Montreal, to the Neurological Institute there, because of a problem I had in my wiring. uh, it had to do with extreme vertigo and a lot of other things. But that's not the point to be made. The point to be made here is that I was sent there, and it was a very specific time, not just in my life, but in the history of medicine, of politics. It was the Cold War, right? The fear of of communist takeover and the threat of the bomb and the space race. All of that was happening. Now, at the institute where I was at that time, I was on my own. My parents were both working. They stayed in Ottawa. I was basically a plaything for the doctors, and something was happening at this time at the Neurological Institute, and more specifically at a part of it called the Allen Memorial Institute. There was a man there, Dr. Cameron, and Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron, who was working with the CIA in America with mind expanding drugs and as a way of erasing personal histories, right? A way of cleaning out the mind. Very scary stuff. But this was going on. Now, my doctor, the person who was looking after me, very famous man called Wilder Penfield. He was my main connection, and he oversaw what I was doing. Well, he also was involved with this use of different mind expanding. I don't know what the term would be. They were very psychological drugs. This was the beginning, and what I was given at this time were very extreme doses. I've done my research in the years gone by of LSD, right? At that time it was called just UML, a variation of LSD. In any event, this moment for me, which is called the Project MK Ultra, which Naomi Klein wrote about quite extensively in her book, The Shock Doctrine. Now, the shock doctrine, as she explains, right, the idea of shock, a state of shock, happens when we get disoriented and lose our narrative. We lose our story. It's our history that gives us continuity and a sense of place and keeps us from entering a state of shock. Our memory, our history, right? So this moment that I'm talking about, I could go on. There's a lot of, I was there for a year. I have some pretty amazing stories. In any event, I was involved with these different drugs from the Sandoz company, and in quite large amounts. And I remember what I was 10, 11, the sense of disorientation. I lost my narrative. I lost my my story because my mind was being played with. Let's try to bring this into a contemporary focus, right? Into what we're dealing with right now. And what it has to do with is, again, government manipulation of our sense of place, our sense of focus, our reality, our understanding of the world, right? And what's happening right now in America with ended the last podcast, the last episode, referring to Trump's astounding executive order, the one that was called Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History, where this was really the rewriting of history. Now, this is nothing new, right? People who have the position of power, writing history in for their story, right? For the people who they want to be put in the forefront of history. I was trained. I was like a dog. I was trained to teach and understand and study and research art history. That was the beginning of my journey, my intellectual academic journey, and the degrees and so forth that I received. So for me, the reading of art, of painting, as a truth is something that I always have known because of my study, that it whether it's religious, historical, or whatever kind of painting, it the truth comes from its source and not from history, right? So let's take an example, a straightforward example, right? This is perhaps one of the most famous historical paintings in French history, and it's Jacques-Louis David's painting of Napoleon crossing the Alps, which he did in the year 1800. Now, he crossed the Alps for sure. I mean, that's a truth, right? That's a bit of history. And his intention was that he was crossing the Alps to go back into Italy and to reclaim the territories that he'd lost in the preceding years. So, it was quite a moment of military grandeur, right? The truth of it, and the history that you see in this painting is a lie. There is the truth that he did go across the Alps. But for instance, the drama that David instilled in this painting with the weather, this blustery wind, this dramatic sky, storm, the darkness of bravado of nature, wasn't like that at all. In fact, the time that he went through the Grand Saint Bernard Pass, which he went across, the weather was sunny and bright and very calm. These troops you see him leading, right? They weren't there. They had already gone before. He went on his own with a small group of people, and so he wasn't really leading them. He was, going on his own. And was he on this grand steed with this, billowing red robe on? No. He in fact went on a mule, a donkey, because that's what you took across the Alps this time. So all of these things which are presented in this painting are at most half or quarter truths, but this becomes the history, right? So what I'm dealing with here is the orchestrating and the rewriting of history that is being attempted in America right now, which is redesigning this narrative, the stories, the authenticity behind art, literature, and culture itself. I think it's fair to say that Napoleon wanted an image that was full of swagger, right? Was full of the natural forces of nature propelling him forward. The gods were with him, right? The wind, everything was moving in a direction that he was traveling, right? Here's a close-up image of Napoleon himself, and you can see that the wind animates everything into a movement with this red cloak and the mane of the horse and even his hair blowing, right? That kind of the energy is everywhere, right? And he's being pushed by the forces of nature, the forces of the universe, to his eventual success, military success. Yes, it's propaganda. Yes, it's an image of its purpose is to aggrandize. There's no question, but we see this as the historic image, right? And history can be bent and shaped, and that's the problem, right? That's where you want the actual story, the truth, and you get a pastiche, right? Here's an image of the Grand Saint Bernard Pass. There are truths, right? This is it's a very difficult trek to go across the Alps. This was a major spot, and there was actually a morgue that was built at the pass to store the frozen bodies of people who didn't make it or froze to death. It was very, very, it was difficult. There were crevices, there were avalanches, rocks. It was a difficult thing. But a little sidelight is that this St. Bernard Pass, there was a monastery there, and the monastery had dogs that were sent out to rescue people. And yes, they were the St. Bernard dogs, the famous St. Bernards. Thought that was a little bit of a fun thing. Here's an image, again, of Napoleon from this painting by Jacques-Louis David, which was done just a year or so after he actually crossed the Alps. And when David was asked to do this portrait, he said to Napoleon, okay, we'll arrange to have some sittings when you can fit them in so I can get your likeness. And Napoleon said, no, it's not what I want. I want the character, my character, the feeling of success, right, to be on my face. So you put that there. And here's a quote from Napoleon speaking to Jacques-Louis David. A resemblance, it is the character that dictates what must be painted. Nobody knows if the portraits of the great men resemble them. It is enough that their genius lives there. Okay, David, get that genius. Show the genius in his face. A final note on this painting. I think it's pretty clear what I'm doing with this. On the ground, there are rocks, right? It's a very rocky pass, right? And on these rocks, David has etched in, right, the names of Napoleon Bonaparte, along with Hannibal and the Latinized name of Charlemagne, right? He's piggybacked on the people who have gone before. I am like them. I am like the great leaders of the past. And it's etched, you know. I had someone who did this, you know, before I got to here. They knew, they engraved it in stones. Let's return to where we sort of entered today, which was the mentioning of that executive order by President Trump, calling for the restoring truth and sanity to American history. It stated in that executive order that there's a flawed history, right? And it has to be corrected, right? That it was, he called it a distorted narrative. While we're talking about narratives, and that had to be changed. And how do you do that? You erase what you don't want to be the narrative. The wrath of this executive order is focused on the Smithsonian, and specifically the Smithsonian's African American History Museum. History is something that has come, you know, it's been around for a while. That's why it's history. And this is not the first time that there has been a confrontation, a banning, a attempt to halt the exhibitions or the directives of the Smithsonian. If we go back to 1994, and this was on the, I believe it was the 50th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima, right? What happened was that the Smithsonian, here's the event, along with the airplane that was used, the Enola Gay. So the Hiroshima bomb dropped on August the 8th, 1945, where 140,000 of Hiroshima's population were killed in the blast. 140,000. The other side is the Enola Gay plane that was used in the bombings with their crew. Now, the Enola Gay, the airplane, got its name from the captain or the pilot of the airplane was a man called Tibbets, and his mother's name was Enola Gay Tibbets. So he gave the plane the name of his mom, and his name was Colonel Paul Tibbets. That's what his name was. So here we have an image of the planned exhibition in 1994 was entitled "The Last Act: The Atomic Bomb and the End of World War II," and it was going to include the plane, Enola Gay, along with images, along with write-ups, along with a critical, curatorial understanding of the last act, the dropping of this bomb on Hiroshima. And here's what happened. It was planned as a co-exhibition with Hiroshima's own museum. And one of the artifacts, one of the objects that was going to be displayed in the exhibition at the Smithsonian was a lunchbox, the lunchbox of a 12-year-old girl, Riko Watanabe. And she was a first-year student at a girls' school there. After the bomb blast of Hiroshima went off, her mother, Taka, searched throughout the city for her daughter, her 12-year-old daughter, Rico, and never found Rico's body. It was simply atomized with the bomb, like hundreds of other, thousands of other bodies. And but the next day, in a field, her mother found this charred lunchbox, and with the name Watanabe on it. Now, the box still held bits of the lunch she'd packed for her daughter. I mean, it's a heartbreaking object, to be sure, with it's sort of the bits of rice and peas still there. This was on loan from the Hiroshima Museum, and the people who were the veterans, the Republicans at that time, said no, they can't do this. They can't. You can't show that. Every parent, when they see that lunchbox, will know exactly what happened, and it just puts a bad light on America. We should celebrate that we ended the war, that this was a positive thing. Even with the loss of lives, it saved so many American lives. That was the story, so that the truth of the incomprehensible loss of innocent life by the dropping of this bomb was seen to be held in this little lunchbox of a schoolgirl who had died. So, what do you do, right? This is the what was put through the sort of the discussion about history. How do you want to do it, right? Should the exhibition explore, look at the loss of Japanese lives, or should it emphasize, U.S.'s victory in the war? Here's another image. This is the remains of Hiroshima, a movie theater after the August 6th dropping of the bomb by Enola Gay. And the other side, I just put in the victory celebrations in Times Square on August 14th, about a week later. So these are the two sides of the story. Do you only focus on one? Do you try to put the two together? The Smithsonian was told they couldn't. If they wanted funding for the exhibition, if they wanted to do this exhibition, they had to get rid of all the captions that were on the walls. They couldn't use that specific title, right? The Last Act. And, veterans groups, many other people who had some sort of sway with the government just said, this is unpatriotic. This is, So in 1994, the Republicans won the House, right? So they had the power. And they simply threatened the Smithsonian, much in the way that Trump is currently doing, to pull all funding if they were going to go ahead with this exhibition and not make it a celebrational one, right? So forget history. We're going to, not worry about the ugly bits. We're just going to deal with the dancing in the streets and not the in June 1995, an exhibition opened up, right? And it was simply called Enola Gay, right? They just said, there's the plane. That's what we're going to talk. We're not going to talk about what the plane actually did, But there's the plane. They refurbished it, and it was big and shiny and beautiful in there. And there was no, the lunchbox certainly wasn't there. Here's a quote from Stud Terkel. Now, Stud Terkel was a writer, historian. He won a Pulitzer Prize. Interesting character. Did a lot of radio commentaries and so forth. And this is a quote which I think is very pertinent to what we're looking at right now, a reflection back on this problems that Smithsonian had in 1994 with the Hiroshima exhibition. Studs Terkel says, talking about history, we're still talking about history here. Our history has been held hostage by the righteous right. From the winning of the West to Hiroshima, our nation's purity of purpose was never doubted. So, from the taming of the West, right, to the dropping of the bomb in Hiroshima, it spun, right? And that's what they're attempting to do right now with the history, the African American history in the States. They're trying to make so that simple things like entertainment, be what's being put on at the Kennedy Center, right? Everything is being subjugated to a rewriting, right? And everywhere now, history is it's basically being held hostage, right? It's you can't. People are not saying what they believe or what they think because there's fear in speaking truth. Now, it just seems so bizarre to even say that, right? But it's this is supposed to be the Western civilization, right? The freedom, expression, critical thinking, but things have changed. They've changed so much, so rapidly. This is why I'm very, very concerned, along with so many other people, about basically Western civilization and what it means, right? And it's here's an absolutely ludicrous coda, right? An absolutely ludicrous little bit of this rewriting of history and how bizarre and unthought out. It's okay. Here's what happened, right? Here is the headline. In March of this year, the name Enola Gay was deleted from all of the references in the Defense Department when they did a purge of anything that was DEI, right? And gay, they decided that no, we can't have that word. So they deleted all the imagery and references in the Defense Archive dealing with Enola Gay because the word gay was used. This is ludicrous, right? This is the government. It's just, I guess I have such a problem, understanding that this is not a parody, right? This is not 26,000 images were deleted, right? And including the Tuskegee Airmen, the black group of military pilots. This is part of history, right? Here's another image. The headline is Pentagon's DEI Purge Mistakenly Flags B-29's Enola Gay Images. And another one referring to the Tuskegee Airmen, the nation's first black military pilots that served in the World War II unit. So this is kind of where we're at, and it affects us all because it's our history, it's world history, and it's things are being destroyed, right? They're not just being reshuffled. Okay, that'll do it for today, and we're going to be moving on to part 4 of the Burned and Banned. There's a lot to be covered, so please tune in for the next episode. I'll post it shortly. And as I always say, do keep the quest alive. So until we meet again, ciao for now.